Good evening, Havenites. How's everybody doing? It's Thursday night. That means it's time for shop talk, which means Alan and I are probably going to say a lot of stupid things to each other, but we have a guest tonight, so we're going to try and be on our very best behavior. So while we are playing the intro video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, pretend like you like the show, even if you don't. Once again, another big shout out to Nick Ellis of Two Brothers Comics for that awesome intro video. We really appreciate that. That stuff makes us very, very happy. And while I'm thinking about it, I have been woefully remiss in reminding folks of who some of our friends are at Haven. And so I wanted to say, if you're going to be getting comic books cleaned and pressed, cleaned with UV light that makes them the whites whiter and the colors brighter, check out Jay Thornton over at CBCP Comics. Can't go wrong. That dude does an awesome job. Also, that video makes me pretty happy. I totally dig that. All right, so without further ado, let me bring you the one, the only Alan Breedlove. What's happening, Alan?
Another day. I've decided I keep preaching against everyone buying yard sale Ouija boards. I've decided I'm going to become the example. I am now in search of a yard sale Ouija board.
Why in the world would you do that? You know what lies in store. You can't go buying Ouija boards from yard sales. You shouldn't buy one from anywhere, but a yard sale is terrible.
I feel like I've got to do it for our viewers. And then on top of that, I did, I threw the offer out there to Nick Ellis Friday or Saturday night on Babylon, whichever it was, and
he shut that down pretty quick.
Nick is terrified he is not going to sumo wrestle you.
I don't know why.
I told him it would be for charity and for my entertainment, and he didn't like the idea. I think it's the my entertainment part.
Well, that's probably true. Also, it could be because he's like half my size, and he didn't want to get squashed like a grape.
Yeah, but I mean, how awesome would it be if you and Nick are sumo wrestling and Dustin and I are on either side just talking trash the entire time?
That would be hysterical. That would be awesome. Well, let's check and see who we got in the chat. It's not a ton of folks so far, but we got Tots as always. Tots, how you doing, brother? Hope everything is going well. Christine saying hi to everybody but Tots. Sounds like there's a feud in the offing there. Don't know what's happening with that, but that's totally cool. We got Mars Comics in the house. What's happening, Mars? Hope everything is going well. And look who this is. It's a shocker. We haven't seen this dude in a while. James Parker, where have you been? We've been missing you, man. We've got an artist on tonight, and you're going to want to study this guy's art. Dude is awesome. So stick around and keep an eye out. Tom Price in the house.
They don't want none of this. They don't want it. I will take the Hell Priest down and assume his position.
He's really just waiting. That's what they call a promotion in that business.
And if you ever read the book Scarlet Gospels, he hates being called Pinhead. He is the Hell Priest.
Also, speaking of Jay Thornton, dude, did you just see me play your video or what? Because that was pretty cool. And speaking of Tom Price, guys, I got to show you something. Tom is doing something cool this week. You guys know he's got his sketchbooks up on the wall at the shop. You can also order them online if you're not local. But Tom he's running a sale this weekend. You want to get his sketchbooks. Whoops, wrong one. I was trying to get rid of that comment. There we go. He's got these guys on sale. So if you want to get a good deal, go ahead and get them now while you can. It's a great time. So get the sketchbook, get both of them, get him to do a sketch for you on the cover. He very intelligently left that a blank cover, so you can do exactly that. Dude does some awesome art, as you guys know, and he sent me a little preview of a piece he's been working on earlier today, and that was awesome. It is ice cold. It is so cool. Anyway, wanted you guys to know about that. So hi thee hither, pick up a Tom Price sketchbook because you're going to want that in your life. So without further ado, let's bring on our guest. What do you say?
Let's do it. I'm ready. I've got a question I'm dying to ask. Let's do it.
All right, guys. This fella isn't. You may not know his name, and there's a reason for that. We'll talk about that. But I guarantee you, you own or have owned at least three things that have his art on them. And little hint, one of those things for me is right here. That's right, Mr. Scott Johnson. How are you, sir?
Hey guys, how are you?
Doing pretty good.
I really need to perfect my Kermit the Frog intro. So every time you intro somebody, I just go like.
You do need to practice that. That would be pretty awesome.
I'll practice that.
Yeah, very cool. My dogs are going to bark for some reason, so that's awesome. We live on a corner in a neighborhood where people love to go for walks in the evening. There's a big parade, and our dogs feel like we are under constant threat. So it's the absolute highest DEFCON level there is. They have to keep an eye out and protect the house from other dogs, people with babies in little strollers, you name it. It's terrible.
Yeah, I understand. Our dog loves to bark at baby strollers. I don't know what it is about them.
Oh, there you go, Christine. Yep, indeed. So, but first of all, I really appreciate you coming on. It's kind of a hard sell. We're a tiny little comic book store in North Alabama, and we're like, hey, you want to come and talk to strangers with us? And so I really appreciate you doing that. That means a lot. So if you wouldn't mind, give folks a little bit of background. I mean, you're an artist, and there's Mike. Mike says, hey, Scott, you're an artist. You've been working in this business for how long?
I started in 1994, and I started out in tabletop role-playing games. Just interior illustrations, black and white, for White Wolf Game Studio. And I don't know if you.
So did you do vampire, werewolf, mage?
Mage.
What?
So that's where I got my start. Was on Mage the Ascension.
Okay.
And
that was a good game.
They had already released the main rule book, but they hired me just as they were starting to roll out their supplement books. So for that 94, 95, I was in almost all the supplement books for Mage the Ascension.
So there's another piece of your art that I own, quite a few of them, I guess. So that's two right there.
Yeah. And then I dabbled in the 90s. I did some Dungeons and Dragons work, a lot of work for Palladium Books on Rifts and Heroes Unlimited.
So who was this one for?
That's a Dragon Magazine piece.
Excellent.
Yeah. So
Look
that was
the toes on that dude, man. That's
So I did that, and then right around 2001, 2002, I got into. I started to move away from like the interior pen and ink work because I felt I had to take a step forward in my career, and I decided I wanted to get into color. And digital color illustration was a new technology that was just emerging, and so I was an early adopter of that technology. I got myself a digital pen and a tablet, and I started experimenting with it and teaching myself because there was nobody at that time. There were no classes you could take, so I pretty much had to just figure it out myself and develop my own type of methodology of working in Photoshop and things like that. And once I proved that I could do it at a professional level, I started doing color book covers for different role-playing games. Kevin Simbita at Palladium Books was really good to me, and he started giving me covers, Rifts covers. Really, some of my favorite work that I've done is still some of those early Rifts covers.
So Rifts too. Okay, so that's three right there. I've probably got 20 things that you did. So I have to ask, because most people don't get into role-playing games unless they like role-playing games. Are you an RPG? Do you play RPGs? Is that something you've done? Do you like it, or are you ambivalent? It's just art to you?
No, as a kid, I was heavily like Dungeons and Dragons, Marvel Comics, Star Wars, and Doctor Who. Pretty much like molded my childhood, and so I was coming out of college. I knew I wanted to do something, with that in that realm. So yeah, I was very much into Dungeons and Dragons, and my playing group played a lot of a game called Champions, which is a superhero role-playing game.
Yep.
We did a lot of that, and D&D mostly. So I didn't actually. The only time I've played any of Palladium's games was when I would occasionally, Kevin Simbita, the publisher of Palladium Books, would invite his freelancers to his house for a weekend, and we would fly into Detroit, and he would me and Ramon Perez, who now has like a dozen awards and Eisner Awards and things like that in the comic sector. But back then he was also a Palladium artist, and a bunch of other guys. We would just fly to Kevin Simbita's house for a weekend and play Rifts or Palladium Fantasy for a weekend, and he would game master, and it was kind of a fun experience. So.
That's awesome. Getting to play for the guy who created it.
Yeah,
that's a different experience. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
when you're playing with the person that created it, how often do they just go completely and totally off the rails and just start adding stuff and making stuff up?
That's what Kevin does. He didn't look at a rule book once. I mean, he invented the game, and he's very loose, and he's the type of game master where if it's working, he goes with it, and
nice.
So he doesn't care. It's like his main focus is, are these guys having fun? I mean, that's all he really cares about. So
that's what RPGs are supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's the core of what they are supposed to be. Fun for everybody at the table.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I played a lot as a kid, a little bit as an adult, but really not in the past 25 years or so. Not so much. Not really.
So how did you move from RPG stuff to this?
Well, it was a calculated move. I was starting to feel that this was a time when the market was changing, and Magic the Gathering really came in the 90s and changed the market, right? And everybody wanted to do trading cards then. And also desktop publishing was also changing the market. And so, which is one of the things that caused me to switch to digital color, because I realized a lot of these publishers, everybody was going desktop publishing, digital printing, full color interiors and exterior. And I just saw a shrinking market for my little, pen and ink black and white illustrations, which is still something, it's what I love to do. I'd love it if black and white, just inked artwork made a comeback, because it's one of my first loves.
Well, let me talk to you about that afterwards, because I'm working on a role-playing game, homebrew 100% from scratch, and I need somebody who could draw me a few critters.
Okay.
So I'll talk to you about some commission on some critters.
Will do.
Because I'm one of those guys with no art talent in these hands.
So yeah, I saw a shrinking market for what I did, and I decided I needed to just pivot. And so I adopted the digital color, and then I started branching off into different types of publishers, and I submitted my work to Games Workshop, which was Warhammer 40K, which is, for people who don't know, is a tabletop miniatures strategy game.
Behemoth of a company, yeah.
Yeah. And I started doing book covers, novel covers, a couple of comic book covers for them. And then I also submitted my work to Marvel and DC. But at the time, Marvel and DC weren't doing variant covers. So they weren't looking for people who just wanted to do cover.
The good old days, as I like to call them.
Yeah, there was no market for guys who just wanted to, if I wanted a job at Marvel Comics, I would have had to have done interiors.
Right.
Because at the time, really, the only guy who was doing them was Alex Ross.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even though I had built up a recognizable name for myself in the gaming community, that didn't necessarily translate to comics. And the comic book fans didn't know my name enough for it to just sell books just by hiring me to do a cover. However, I did get a phone call from Marvel's creative department, at the time because they were looking for somebody new that could build a digital art library for their merchandise and toys. And they needed somebody who was able to do digital illustration. And even though there are some of us doing it and a growing number of us doing it in the game community, what I didn't realize is that Marvel was having a really hard time finding anyone to do that for them. And so I was kind of the right place at the right time. I submitted a portfolio piece. Actually, it's that calendar up there in the corner. I don't know if you probably can't see it on screen. And they loved it so much, they bought it. And then they basically said, look, is this digital? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay, so can you like layer this so the characters and the backgrounds are completely separate and can be separated and removed, and you can deliver this artwork digitally? And I'm like, yeah, that's how it works. And they said, okay, we can give you as much work as you can handle, which is great because my wife and I had just had a baby, and
and they're weirdly expensive.
Right? Yes, amazingly so.
And the older they get, the more they cost.
Absolutely.
So then you started doing things like movie tie-ins or stuff for movies, right?
Yeah, that came a little bit later. So
just for the record, that Hulk is sick.
Thanks.
Man, I love that.
That is not all me. I did have a hand in putting that together. One of the themes of the whole merchandise and toys in the creative department is that I was one of many artists that contributed, but I was the one guy who was kind of like the main funnel, and especially because they started me out on just general merchandise stuff, and that's when I was doing a lot of the Spider-Man art. Those early years where Spider-Man was obviously their big thing for toys and merchandise. So like most of the stuff I did, and then I started. They had me do the other classic Avengers. They had me do Captain America stuff and Thor and the Thing and some of their classic A-list characters like that, Iron Man. But then in 2005, there he is. In 2005 is when they finally decided that they offered me a exclusive contract, and that was because at the same time I was doing work for Warhammer 40K, and I was doing book covers and comic covers for them. I was doing Palladium. I was doing Rifts covers. So every once in a while,
you were a busy man.
I was, and they said that they didn't like sharing me with Rifts and Warhammer, so they locked me down to a contract.
Jeremy always likes to ask a strange and challenging question. If you were not an artist, what would you do with your life?
Well, the answer the easy answer would be being a writer, because that's what my teachers told me I should have been.
Interesting.
I was really hoping you were going to say a realtor, because that's what he is, and it would have blown his mind.
Well,
see, my default answer for that question is dentist, because that way I can cause people pain and they pay me for it.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, the writing thing. I was told by both my senior year high school creative writing teacher and my freshman year college writing teacher that I had what it took to be a professional writer. But
that's two high endorsements right there, because they don't tell that to everybody.
At the time, though, writers were really out of favor in the comic book industry, and it was all about the artists. This is like 89, and the artists were rock stars. And and I would go to the comic book conventions, and I would see a line a mile long for Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee, and like nobody paid attention to the artists. And it just seemed like if I wanted to get discovered, it would be probably easier if I went into art than trying to chase somebody around with a script and convince them to read my stuff. So that was
not wrong. It's unfortunate, but you're not wrong.
So I decided, freshman year of college, I decided to switch to art school, and I was horribly not talented enough to pull that off, but I was too stupid to know at the time. And it worked out in the long run. So
that's hilarious.
So he went from switching to art major, saying he's not talented enough, to producing this, which I absolutely love. Okay, so I wished I was not talented enough. How about we say that?
After they locked me down, that was in the earlier days when we were doing the general merchandise stuff, and then then they got me an exclusive contract in 2005, and I was doing this full time, and then and right around 2007 is when they moved me over to the movie merchandise, because that's when they were putting together the beginnings of the first Iron Man movie. Yeah. And so I moved over, and Adi Granov was on point for that one.
Yep.
But he was busy also doing his comic book covers and everything else, so he couldn't also do all the work for the merchandise. So I was hired for the Iron Man merchandise to basically do the best I could to copy Adi Granov's style. And so everything would go into the style guide, like his work and my work would both be in the style guide together. And theoretically, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I know the difference. And so from then on, I worked on merchandise and toys for every MCU movie from the original Iron Man all the way through to Avengers Endgame.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got two questions on that. One, and this is one I was dying to ask you before we even got started when you mentioned it. What was it like the first time you walked into a Walmart or something and you saw a piece of merchandise with your art or your designs and everything on it? I mean, what was that experience like for you?
And how long did it take you to stop buying all of that stuff?
So I do remember the first time I ever saw my work in the wild. I don't remember what year it was, but it was probably 2004, I'm guessing. And my family was out to breakfast at a pancake house or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we were on our way out, and we walked into the library, the lobby, and there were vending machines selling. And then one of the vending machines sold stickers. And I looked through the window on the vending machine, and I saw my artwork on these different Spider-Man stickers. And so that was the first time I still have that memory of the first time I saw that.
Mad dash for quarters at that point.
Right. Yeah. After a while,
you spend before you got your sticker?
I don't. You know what? I probably did buy one. I probably did. I would have. I don't remember putting the quarter in the machine, but I probably did.
Well, that's when you give the quarter to your kid. You're like, hey, put the quarter in the machine, all right? I'm going to need that sticker. Get that sticker for me.
Right. No, not the Batman. Over here.
Stop going to Batman. Right. Although not too long ago, you actually posted something. You said, hey, I submitted this Batman to DC a while back, and they didn't end up doing anything with it, but I revisited it, and I amped it back up, and that was your Batman.
Yes. Yeah. So that was originally, that was a portfolio piece.
Lord, that's beautiful.
Thank you. That's the revised version. I originally did that in 2003 as a portfolio piece, and I sent it to DC, and it didn't get picked up. And so I kind of recently went back and revamped it just for fun, just for my own, just because I've been looking at it for years, and anytime I look at my old stuff, I see the things that I would want to change, and so I kind of changed it. So,
well, I mean, the colors you've got on that sky, the building over here on the side with the tall needle, the angle that he's taken, the rain coming down, the gargoyle, man, that's Alex Ross couldn't do that any better.
Wow, thank you.
Actually, Alex Ross would make him kind of chunky. I don't know. Alex Ross's Batman always looks like he's been eating really well. I know he uses the live models and he uses the same dude, but it's like, man, your vision of Batman is different from everybody else's, Alex. That's the one thing, the one criticism I might levy to that man, although, holy Lord, he does amazing work. He ain't got nothing on that.
Well, I think that my original version that I did back then probably was too much influenced by Alex Ross and not up to his quality level, and which may have been why DC passed on it, because why hire an Alex Ross knockoff if you've already got the him, right? So,
Well,
but
they don't have him anymore.
I like my version that I just revised. I like this version better. So.
Well, when you posted it, that got my attention. I was like, "Holy Lord, this is phenomenal!"
Thank you.
That's a Batman I wouldn't mind walking. I mean, I don't want him hovering above me, looking down at me with that batarang, because I don't want to be the target. But I like to look at it from over here, where I'm not in his line of fire. Uh, amazing work, amazing work. What was your other question you wanted to ask, Alan?
I done forgot. We got sidetracked. I mean, well.
You were asking about walking through the stores and seeing my art on the shelves and things like that.
Yeah. So what's it like for you? You literally started when, the MCU was in its infancy. I mean, it was still kind of a concept, and then you worked all the way up through Avengers Endgame. What's it like now, with Endgame being over with, and you look back on all that time and you still see people that, I mean, some of the stuff that y'all did with MCU is the reason why some people started collecting, period. I mean, does stuff like that ever cross y'all's mind? I mean, as far as the whole, it's 10, 12 years later and they still want this stuff.
I think, what they did, Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios did, with the MCU is just an incredible thing. And like Hollywood hadn't seen it before, to create an interconnected universe. And really what Kevin Feige did was he borrowed a page from Stan Lee, because that's what Stan Lee did back in the 1960s with Jack Kirby, right? And they created this, and that was the draw of the original Marvel Comics, was that it was this interconnected universe where if something was going on in Fantastic Four, it may affect what's going on in Spider-Man or what's going on in the Avengers. And there were constant crossovers like that, which comic book readers hadn't seen at the time. That was a new thing. And it was like the cool, unique thing at the time for comic books. And eventually, 40 years later, it kind of fell apart under its own weight, because then you had so much continuity problems that you had to kind of reboot it. But at the time, that was groundbreaking. And then so Kevin Feige made it work with the movies, and it kind of revolutionized, Hollywood. And I really think it's cool, because for me, it was a special experience to see those movies, because I grew up with all those stories, reading the stories, and because they stayed so true to the spirit of the source material. And certainly you have to change things, in certain details. But because they stayed true to the spirit of the source material, and many times they just basically use the comic books as storyboards. And you would see a scene in the movie, and I'm like, I remember reading that panel when I was 12 years old. And so that's the kind of thing for me. It was incredibly nostalgic for me. As far as my role with the merchandise, I don't know, because I wasn't the one growing up buying those backpacks and lunchboxes. And so to me, it was just sort of like, hey, I've got a cool job and I'm doing this, and I'm part of this bigger thing, which is kind of really neat. I'm just now understanding, because of the reactions I'm getting on Instagram and Twitter, that there's this whole generation of kids that grew up with my art on their backpacks and lunchboxes and school folders and everything, and posters on the wall, that the classic Marvel posters with 100 different Marvel characters, and like my Spider-Man is like front and center, right, right in the front of with that poster. Like my version of Spider-Man, to them, that's their nostalgic, that's their Spider-Man. And so I'm just recently getting those type of comments now, is like, Generation Z is they're discovering me and realizing that I'm the guy who did that artwork. And it's a weird experience, because for so many years I was told like not to promote myself, and you're not going to get your signature on the t-shirts. And the 12-year-old, I was actually literally told, a 12-year-old kid at Walmart doesn't care who drew the Spider-Man. He just cares that it's a Spider-Man t-shirt. And I understood that because, I get it. But it's kind of neat now to have that type of recognition, and to have these, kids that were maybe 6 or 7 years old, in 2008, and now they're, in their early 20s or whatever, and they're discovering like who I am and the work that I did, and like the work that I did means something to them is kind of cool. So
Hey, Chris, in case you missed it, our guest tonight, Scott Johnson, he has done merchandising art and marketing material, kind of art for Marvel from the very first of the MCU movies all the way up through Endgame. So he was their Iron Man through Endgame. And I know you're a film guy, so that's going to be meaningful to you.
Okay, so now you also mentioned that, how closely they stayed to the source material when they were doing the movies. When y'all were working on the merchandise and the art and everything, when they stayed that close to the source material, does it make it easier on you as an artist, or does it kind of put the handcuffs on because you got to stay like within a certain box because of what they're doing?
yeah, that's so working in a box, as you say, even started even before the movies. If we go back earlier than that, and we just my general merchandise stuff on Marvel Heroes and Spider-Sense Spider-Man and those type of campaigns, the whole gist of me working digitally was that I create this art library of heroes, whether it's Spider-Man or Captain America or the Hulk or whatever, and they would put those into the digital library, and then they would also have background images, and that would be put into the library. And Marvel had total control over that art. And then if they had licensees come to them and say, "Hey, I want to produce this toy or this piece of merchandise," or for whatever it was, they would then have access to the artwork that we did, and they could mix and match whatever character poses they wanted and have their graphic designers put it together. For that reason, I had to work in a very generic fashion. So the lighting, the shadows, everything had to be very universal. Artistically, it was very boring to work that way. And kind of bland. But because of the way everything functioned, that's how I had to work. So I couldn't put dramatic lighting or dark shadows. I had to do all the poses in a way where the character's like logo was easily visible on the chest. Everybody always had to be facing forward. Even when we were doing battle scenes, everybody had to be facing forward, including the bad guy. So try and imagine the Fantastic Four fighting the Mole Man, but everybody had to be facing forward the camera. You can't. It doesn't work. But I had to do the best I could. So even back then, there were all these restrictions that I had to work under, so that they could have their marketing and their merchandise system work, so that it could be very generic and very kind of, like I said, mix and matched. Everybody could just pick this piece and this piece and put it together and do whatever they want for their products. So that created a lot of challenges for me early on.
I bet.
Which then kind of helped me when we moved over to the movie merchandise, because it was a whole new set of restrictions. But I had learned patience at that point. And I had learned that, it's like, this is the gig. I have to kind of put my artist ego aside and do the job the best I can under whatever restrictions they give me. And so, yeah, a lot of times especially the early days of the MCU, the studio in California was not playing nice with the offices in New York. And there wasn't a lot of trust between Marvel Studios in Hollywood and the New York offices that I worked with, because they were trying to build this, this movie universe, and they didn't want any leaks to happen. And they were afraid that if they kind of, sent the information to New York, that somehow that we would like leak the information, and it never happened that way on our end, but it made things difficult because, like, for instance, Captain America, the first Avenger, I was working on, I had to do a likeness of Chris Evans, but they didn't give me any photograph of Chris Evans in costume. I was literally Google image searching Chris Evans to try and do my mock-ups of Captain America and make it look like him. And all I would get, and like, because the studio wasn't giving us anything to work with.
Wow.
And it just seemed, and each new movie presented its own challenge because of the way the director and the producer of that particular MCU film wanted to play with the New York offices. And so I would often not get the greatest source material. Sometimes I would be banging my head against the wall trying to just get, like, I remember once, I think it was Spider-Man Homecoming, I couldn't get a good picture from the studio of the costume. Like, I had a blurry picture, but nothing that would really give me details that would help inform me do my job. And then I did the best I could, and I spent this crazy amount of hours doing it, and I finally submitted it. And like a week later, photographs of Tom Holland in costume and during on a film shoot like leaked online, and which was much better than anything that I had to work with.
That had to be aggravating. I mean,
it was
like, here, do your job. Why aren't you doing your job the way we want you to do your job? Oh, we're not giving you what you have to have. Oh, well, we're still not going to give that to you. I mean, good luck.
Right.
I hope what you think it's going to look like is what we think it's going to look like. It's like the worst game of telephone ever.
So on some of those movies, they kind of had, I think at one point I saw or I read where they were filming like 5 movies at one time. When they're doing something like that, did that make y'all's schedule hectic on your end, trying to figure out what you had to have done by a certain time as far as the art was concerned?
Yeah. So we had multiple artists working on things. Oftentimes there would be a lead artist for a particular movie brand where we were working up the merchandise for. And quite often I would not be that lead artist. I would be the guy who was taking all the art from the different artists, and then I would be like the last pass on all of the artwork, so it all looked the same.
You were batting cleanup.
I was. I was. Yeah. Or if you want to do a pitching analogy, I was the closer, I guess, because we would get a Hulk from this guy and a Hulk from this guy and this guy, and because there's 3 different artists, it looks different. So then I have to kind of do revisions on all 3 of them, so it looks like kind of that all fits together. So I was, I did that function for a number of different movies. And then there are some times where I had to, like, mid-film, what was it? I remember we were doing Amazing Spider-Man 2, so this was Andrew Garfield. And I was in the middle of working up art on that. And they wanted to move me over to they just started Guardians of the Galaxy, and they wanted to take me off of Amazing Spider-Man 2 and put me on Guardians of the Galaxy, because Guardians was an MCU film. So
now we know why Amazing Spider-Man 2 didn't do as well as it should have. Got it.
No. But I recruited my friend Tyler Walpole, who is
the name I know.
He's okay. He's a fantastic fantasy artist, and so I brought him in. He took over on Amazing Spider-Man 2 for me, so I could move over to Guardians of the Galaxy. And so occasionally I would recruit people that I know, from the business to kind of like, help and pitch in. But yeah.
So do you have a favorite movie in the MCU that you worked on, or is there one that the process was easier than others, one that you looked at and said, you know what, that one I'm particularly proud of or happy about?
Oh, wow.
I know. Which one of your children do you like best? We all know you for really real have favorites.
I can't think of any. They were all so different. Like, it really did seem that for most the early films prior to the first Avengers movie were interesting because they hadn't figured out a system yet, and so each movie they tried a different process. So each movie I went into it with, we're gonna approach the art this way, or we're gonna do it this way, or for once, like for instance, with the original Iron Man, Adi was working with Jon Favreau developing the armor, but it was still in a process of development while we were doing the merchandise art. And so I would spend a week.
That's got to be tough.
I would spend a week doing merchandise art for going off of Adi's designs, and then Monday morning would come in and they're like, all right, they changed the design. They're going with a different design now. So here's the new concept art from Adi. You have to go back to last week's work, do revisions to make it look like this, and then catch up and do this week's work.
Yeah, good thing you were working digital.
So that was the type of challenge, and it kept happening. And then another week would go by, and then and for like 3-4 weeks they until they finally settled on on an Iron Man design. So I was doing that. So that was like one challenge for Iron Man. And then for Captain America, there was the challenge where I knew what the costume looked like, but nobody would give me a picture of Chris Evans in costume. So I'm like Google searching little pictures of Chris Evans and trying to make it look like. And then with Thor, they actually the creative director, the VP of creative director at the time, Tom Marvelli, actually flew to Hollywood and did a photo shoot with Chris, the guy who plays Thor.
Chris Hemsworth.
Yes, Chris Hemsworth. And they did a photo shoot with him. So I actually had photographs of him in costume, but it was a very early version of the costume. So it's like the foam, it was like foam, and there was like pieces of like foam like sticking out because the seams hadn't been stitched yet, and his hair wasn't totally grown out, so it was just like past his ears. And so with each film it was a different challenge, and I think that was frustrating but challenging at the same time. And I appreciated each one had its own creative challenges that I had to overcome, which at the time I was screaming at the computer screen and wanting to pull my hair out.
Oh, I bet.
But in retrospect, that really pushed me out of my comfort zone with each new film. By the time we got into whatever phase, post the first, probably after Age of Ultron, they kind of settled into a system where they were getting photographs and they wanted me to they were doing professional shoots of the actors in costume, and they wanted me to just digitally paint over the actors. So everything just kind of looked like a photo retouched version of the characters, a kind of almost a fake painted look, which I didn't care for, and it was kind of boring to do. So at that point, it just got to be like, a job for me, because I still enjoyed it, but it wasn't as challenging as as the early movies.
I can see that becoming tedious.
Yeah.
Christine wants to know, there was a famous Little Mermaid doll that made it out that had blonde hair, and she wondered if anything like that ever got through the merchandise process by accident that you know of on the MCU movies.
Nothing I can think of the MCU movies. The one piece of merchandise that always comes back to haunt me is the Spider-Man Mylar balloon.
I wasn't going to bring that up, but I can see that was just like innocent mistakes. Like, you draw a character and that was perfect, and they're like, we're going to make this into a balloon, a three-dimensional balloon.
That balloon when I'm taking a drink.
We have to attach the balloon somewhere, and they just didn't think that through. No, so it's a highly inappropriate Spider-Man Mylar balloon, because Spider-Man's jumping in the air, and he's got both knees out and his feet coming in, and they attach the balloon right in the crotch. And since it's a Mylar balloon, they have to make a little funnel so that they can put the air in it. It's a bad look all around. And yeah, that wasn't anything you did. You didn't draw that.
No. But seriously, for years, I had people, tagging me on social media, asking me if I had anything to do with this, and I'm like, well, kind of. It's like I didn't design the balloon, yeah, but it is my Spider-Man.
I guess that's when you're glad you didn't get to sign your art. Is
Yeah,
He took Spider-Man to a whole new level.
no doubt.
yeah.
That's that was something. I actually remember seeing that balloon in a Publix or a Walmart or something, and just laughing so hard. I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe that nobody caught this. Nobody was in the process before when they did their prototype of the balloon. They didn't go, something about this is not right.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
right. His
But
web shooters are where again? Right. Right.
I posted a picture of the Mylar balloon on Instagram, and Instagram actually they 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 like they whatever blurted out for adult content. It triggered the Instagram algorithm for profanity.
Wow,
And I've
that's
seen a
something.
lot worse on Instagram.
That's something. But yeah, that's I wasn't going to bring up the balloon, but you're absolutely right. That's one of those things where you do this and like, what are you going to do? That's crazy.
Speaking of Instagram, if anyone wants to go check out what all he has, here's the link to his Instagram page and some amazing flipping art on here, especially this one of Gamora. I'm looking at it now.
Yeah. Yeah, that was for the first Guardians. That was when they pulled me off of Amazing Spider-Man 2 and put me on that one. That one I did get a really good photograph of the actress's face to work from. So at least I got a really good likeness on that one.
So did you protest any when they stuck Captain America on a Cowboys t-shirt?
I'm a Bears fan, so I did not approve of that at all.
I bet
So
that hurt a little bit.
A Bears fan. Are you from Chicago, or are you just like the Bears?
No, I've lived in the suburbs all my life of Chicago, so yeah.
Excellent. So C2E2 is in your backyard.
Yes. Yeah.
Also, football season is coming up,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, how are the Bears going to do this year? Because they have been an enigma for the past several years. Is Justin Fields going to be a good quarterback? I mean, what's going to happen?
So it's a whole new general manager and front office staff and head coach, an entirely new coaching staff. So they started fresh, and this new general manager just basically ripped everything down to the studs, and he's starting from square one, and it's a complete rebuild project.
Yeah, I think that was the right thing to do. It's going to be painful, but it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. So, but I like how this new general manager is working, and I like everything I'm hearing about the coaching staff, and I'm very optimistic about Justin Fields. I think he's the most talented guy we've had on the Bears in a really long time, and I just hope they don't screw him up. And I think that if they can get through a couple years of rebuilding and he develops, to his potential, I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, Mitch Trubisky got the short end of the stick there. I think they didn't know what to do with him, and they didn't have it. Mike, just so you know, here's links to Scott's stuff. And Scott, while we're talking about links to your stuff and everything, I know you're a busy man and you're doing a lot of work. Do you take commissions? Are you doing any commissions for folks?
So, traditionally, I haven't done a lot of commissions. I do have one right now on the shelf that I owe somebody, and I'm thinking about opening up my list in the future, or so it's. Yeah, I suppose if somebody comes to me and asks me to do something, I would probably take it right now, because I actually have time in my schedule to do it. So I haven't. It's kind of a weird thing. So for so many years, I was just too busy to worry about commissions, and so anybody who asked, I turned down. But I'm not. Now that I'm kind of thinking about getting back into going to conventions and doing commissions again. So yeah, sure.
I call dibs then.
So speaking of
I know
commissions,
Mike is. There you go. I told you this was going to happen. Yeah.
So
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, brush up on your drawing of Wonder Woman. Mike's wife looks like he robbed her from Themyscira. He just absconded with her, and they're both big fans of Wonder Woman. So he gets a lot of Wonder Woman commissions.
That's cool.
So
I don't think I've ever drawn Wonder Woman, so that'd be fun.
Really?
To do. Yeah.
Are there any particular characters that, like, if somebody wants you to draw, you're just like, I don't want to draw that character. I don't like drawing that character. Who's your most hated character that you've had to draw that you just did not enjoy drawing?
Oh,
That's a good question. I'm interested in that.
wow.
Hey, I've asked some like professional questions tonight.
You've been brushing up.
I know.
Characters that I don't, a lot of times it's a matter of, am I used to drawing a certain character or not? I did some work on Transformers because now that I'm not working directly with Marvel anymore. Hasbro is my main client, and they had me on Transformers, and I just was not somebody who drew a lot of like mecha, and so that was really challenging.
I've talked to a lot of artists who like, what do you love to draw? Like, I like to draw the characters and the people and the doing stuff. What do you not want to draw? Transformers. It's all rulers and lines and hard corners and edges and yeah. So speaking of Hasbro, this is you, right?
Yes. Yeah, I did a lot of that promotion stuff for the Snake Eyes movie. Yeah.
In case you can't tell, I'm a fan
there you go. Yeah.
of the G.I. Joe and the Snake Eyes. He is too. You're the first artist we've had on that's ever done anything professional with Snake Eyes, as far as I'm aware. And so you win a special place in both of our hearts. Tell us that you really love drawing Snake Eyes. You'll just make us both very happy.
Now, I legitimately love drawing Snake Eyes. He's just a cool looking character. He really is. So, yeah.
Now, just for argument's sake, you could have said Snake Eyes, Lady J, or Flint, and I'd have been fine.
Well, if you go to I think it's like gijoe.com, I think is the website. It's basically Hasbro's website for their G.I. Joe content, and a lot of the stuff that's my art, for their character art.
So when Hasbro does these emails that I get every day, there's always ones. Some of them are Transformers focused. Some of them are Power Rangers focused. I don't care about either of those. Some of them are Star Wars, which I care about marginally, and some of them are G.I. Joe, and those make me very happy. When they come out with that stuff, are you doing anything with G.I. Joe these days?
Not right now. I've been doing...
Should I send them a strongly worded letter that they need to put you back on that?
Yes. Yeah, I would love to go back on G.I. Joe. I've been on Power Rangers for the past year. So I'm like Dino Fury. So yeah,
I get all of those emails. I see that.
If you go to gijoe.com and then click on their like meet the characters.
Hang on just a second. I'm already there. I didn't want any time. I'm about to share this right quick, and we're gonna break this one down.
Okay.
So here we are.
Yeah. So if you scroll down, let's see. That's my Flint, and that's my Duke.
No, and Duke. Yep.
Yeah, those are mine. Gung Ho. That's me. Lady J. That's me. Yeah. We scroll down some more. That's my Snake Eyes.
Oh man.
That's awesome.
Scarlet. That Scarlet is kind of like half me, like a different artist started it and I finished it. So that's kind of like, so yeah. So there's a lot of my art, and then I might have some stuff on the Cobra side as well. I'm not sure.
I love Power Rangers.
So all right, so all of these images, yeah. So if you look at, where was those? That Baroness is mine.
The Cobra Commander, did you do that one?
Destro and the Red
Fireball
Ninja, those
first.
were all started by other artists, and I kind of like did some touch-ups on those, so I can't really claim they're mine, but I did work on them a little bit. So yeah, that's Zartan, that's me.
Oh heck yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Zartan, you say?
Do you have the inside scoop? Hey, I've got one of those ordered. Do you have the inside scoop on who the classified coming soon file is?
I know nothing. I really.
Good answer. Good answer.
I couldn't tell you had a glare on your glasses.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if you were winking when you said that. You know, I know
Well,
nothing.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Say no more. Say no more.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So that, yeah, I did all those. That was about a couple years ago, and then they moved me over to Power Rangers. So I've been doing Dino Fury for the last year or so.
they're making a killing on Power Rangers right now. I'll tell you that.
I was really
so you
surprised.
started. I mean, just to kind of recap a little bit here, because this is really fascinating. Really good writer and encouraged to be a writer. And you said, I think I can make a bigger splash with art. So you go to art. You do a lot of art for various RPG publishers, pretty much all of which I have. And you push into digital from there, going into covers and that sort of thing over interiors. And then you push straight into the merchandising and marketing side of things.
Yeah.
Where you like camp out and do all the coolest stuff in the universe for 15 years. And then you're doing toys for also the coolest toy company that's putting anything out.
Yeah.
Hats off to you. You've been extremely busy. You've made a lot of people happy. You bring, I mean, this is dumb. I have to tell you, I'm an enormous person. I mean, I'm 6'6" and 450 pounds, and you don't find a whole lot of cool shirts. You find a lot of just plain Jane, no color, no nothing. You don't find a lot of cool shirts. And when I walked into the Big and Tall store and I saw this Spider-Man shirt, I couldn't tell you how fast I grabbed that up. I've also got an Iron Man shirt, which I'm pretty sure you did, and a Captain America shirt, which I'm pretty sure you did. Because they're all tied into the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all this style of art. So I look at that and I'm like, that brings joy to people. That makes people happy. They have positive associations with these things that they love. And they can proudly display those. And you did that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, it's been a hell of a career so far, and I'm not done yet. So we'll see what's still in the future for me. I guess I've
do
been
you
very
have
lucky.
anything that you're looking forward to particularly that you're saying, hey man, this is something I really want to do outside of commissions for people like me?
I think I've been doing toys and merchandise for so long, and I don't want to stop doing that. But it would be nice to get back to doing covers again, because that was something that was creatively it was so much fun, and I could do things. I wasn't so much boxed in as you referred to it earlier when I was doing covers. That I had more creative freedom to really kind of cut loose and do that kind of stuff. So that would be fun to get back into. The question is I guess I would just have to work up a new portfolio of book covers and try and submit my work to the publishers and see if they would pick me up, because the people who are like the editors who are assigning the work on that end really don't know me, and they would probably just want me to prove it all over again. So
let me ask you this. You've got writing chops. Do you have stories that you want to tell that you say, I'd like to write this, and you've got the art chops to do the art too? And I mean, the number of comics that are being put out on platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo is staggering.
Yeah.
And some folks, they barely scrape by and pay for what they're doing, but some folks make so much money doing those things that it's insane. Do you ever consider doing something like that?
Um, I have connections and friends who produce their own comics, and all I ever hear from them is how much work it is and how much it sucks their like the amount of energy and time they put into it is just incredible. I have so much respect for independent comic book creators who are constantly just putting everything they have into their creation. It really is amazing and daunting in a ways. um, I guess the cheap answer is I don't know. I don't know if I have that type of energy to do that. um,
This is one of those.
mhm.
If you haven't seen this one, Aaron Lepresti's Wraith of God. By the way, we have not 15 anymore, but we had 15 copies in at the store just a few days ago, and we still have several left. So grab this book up. It's 80 pages of awesome. And he did the writing, coloring, or not the coloring. He did the writing, pencils, inks, and he paid somebody else to do the colors. But he did the whole 9 yards, and this is a phenomenal book. If y'all have not tried this out or picked this up, highly recommend it.
And that's an amazing achievement to be writer, penciler, inker, probably letterer and everything else.
Oh, letterer too. Yes, he did.
It's an incredible undertaking. It really is. And then you have to promote it, and then you have to get it published, and then you have to get it into stores and comic shops, right? And it's so much. I think that I think I would be interested in kind of dipping my toes, but one of my biggest hurdles is that I'm such a perfectionist that if it didn't look like, if I tried to draw my first ever page of sequential art storytelling, because I've never actually attempted it, if it didn't look like Neil Adams right off the bat, I'd probably be like, oh, I suck.
Well, that's a heck of a bar to hold yourself to.
And of course that's my own like problem, right? I have to be able
just
to
remember, Rob Liefeld is very popular.
Okay, I'm not going to comment on that.
I'm saying the depth and breadth of fandom covers Neil Adams to Rob Liefeld and beyond. Rob is still very popular, and he can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. But he does interiors on books, and you don't have to be Neil Adams. Believe me, I would prefer it. But you just be the best Scott Johnson that's out there, because there's not anybody else that does it quite the way you do.
Yeah. So so I would definitely have to get over my own kind of hang-ups in that regard, and just say screw it, I'm going to do this, right?
So, well, if you ever decide you want to go that way, definitely let us know, because we will promote the heck out of it.
Very cool. Thank you.
We will let people know.
So you mentioned like Neil Adams and Alex Ross, but out of the people who are doing, let's say, the more modern variant covers, like the J. Scott Campbells, the Tyler Kirkhams, those people, who are some of the artists that are out now that you're just kind of like, hey, I really like what they're doing? And you could also throw some out there that you don't like. I'm not going to mind that either.
Wow. It's hard. I don't often make it into the comic shop and see what's being produced as much anymore. I grew up in the Bronze Age, so like my guys are like Gil Kane and John Buscema. Like that's like those are my like gods of comic art right there.
You can't. You're not going to do any better than that.
But there's a lot of really great comic book art being produced right now, and I don't know, off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone that just jumps out, but that's not because there isn't like great artists doing it. It's just that I'm not really tied into the currently what's being produced in the comic shops.
So I think there was like a variation of this question asked at one time to somebody else. Who would be your Mount Rushmore of comic book artists?
You just said John Buscema and Gil Kane, and
John Buscema, Gil
those
Kane,
are tough ones to beat.
John Romita's on there. You got to put Kirby on
Senior,
there.
I'm guessing.
Yes, and nothing against Junior, but I grew up with my favorite model for Spider-Man is who I was reading when I was 5 years old, and that was Gil Kane on pencils and John Romita inks, which
Yes,
I
sir.
think is one of the most underrated penciler inking combinations of all time. So I mean, yeah, you've got Romita Sr., John Buscema, Gil Kane, Jack Kirby, and then throw Neil Adams in there, and yeah, that's probably my Mount Rushmore right there.
That's a
Oh,
solid
wait.
Mount Rushmore.
Tom, you found a Buscema sketchbook? Nice. How have you not brought that to the store for me to look at it? Shame on you. Shame, shame, shame. I'm gonna start ringing that bell. That's awful. I tell you, your taste in art, or it's the stuff you grew up on, I'm guessing, but your taste in art runs very similar to mine. Um, you go back, it's tough to beat the Spider-Man run of artists. For the longest time, you never got a better artist, and when it switched over uh, after Ditko, it was a totally different flavor of art, but
Yeah.
it was the heart of Spider-Man. And I appreciate very much what Ditko did in establishing Spider-Man, but the run after him was the run that really resonated with me, and that's where I look at it and go, that's my Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That's my Peter Parker. That's how MJ looks. That's how Gwen Stacy is supposed to look. I do have a question for you, and you probably don't have an answer for this any better than anybody else, but why does Aunt May look like a 4,000-year-old mummy? She should be roughly the same age as his parents, right? I mean, somewhere in there.
I think that was just Steve Ditko's way of making sure you knew she was an old woman.
She had a hard life.
She
was only 32.
She did a lot of partying. How about that?
Great Aunt May.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but when I was introduced to Marvel Comics when I was 5. So this would be like 1975. My cousin, who was probably about 12, decided that he had a comic book collection. He was done, and so he just gave me his collection of Marvel Comics, which was like over 300 comics from like 1973 up to like 1975, which was just like the core of the Bronze Age right there.
That's right in the heart of it.
And it was just like, and so here I am like 5-6 years old, and I just read and reread those comics over and over and over again until the mid 80s when I discovered a comic shop, and that was like walking into a cathedral. But so yeah, for years, for like a 9-10 year period, I just reread those same Bronze Age comics, and it was the death of Gwen Stacy and the first appearance of the Punisher and the first appearance of Wolverine and Iron Fist, and I mean, it just like so many great books and such a great time to be a Marvel Comics reader.
Do you still have that original collection that he gifted you? Do you still have that?
I do.
That's
I do.
Awesome.
I have. Hold on a second, if you just don't mind.
Oh, awesome.
Wait.
We get some insight.
We done got more than we bargained for tonight.
Yeah. Also, look at that giant drafting table. That thing's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. So, how long before you con him into drawing you something, G.I. Joe?
You hush up. That's on the list.
So,
It's on the list.
This is mine from when I was 5 years old.
Oh, man.
See,
and that's the one that he gave you, read and reread and reread.
Yes.
What makes
that closet back there with the white doors?
Yeah.
That's all comics back there from this, So
see, what makes that even better is that 181 is legit yours. You didn't buy it off eBay from somebody or at a shop somewhere. That's like legit your comic. I mean, that's worth so much more to me than the monetary value of the book.
It is.
Yeah.
I have a Marvel Marvel Premiere 15 in the closet, which is the first appearance of Iron Fist.
Yep.
And it is in much worse shape than this. I mean, the cover is torn. You know, there's no Marvel value stamp, and it looks like a 5-year-old kid read it 1,000 times, because that's what happened. And to me though, so it has
That's what
very
comics
little.
are for.
It has very little monetary value because it's so in such beat up shape, but it has so much more sentimental value to me because, you know, when I was reading that story as a kid, you know, and the way Gil Kane drew the story and drew the flashback of young Danny Rand watching his parents be murdered, that had an effect on me as a little boy. I mean, I cried when I read that comic as a kid, and I still remember how I felt to this day. So yeah, I mean, those books, they mean a lot to me. Yeah.
See, that's what it's all about right there. Comics were meant to be read. I've got several that I have in CGC cases too, and that's largely for preservation purposes,
Right.
and all that kind of thing. But if I wanted to collect baseball cards, I'd collect baseball cards. I collect comics because they have a story in them.
Right.
Other than memorizing some stats off the back of the card, there's no story to a baseball card. I like the story. I like that they have something going on. I wish to goodness Spider-Man could get back to the kinds of stories they used to tell, because anymore it's these big convoluted stories that go all over the place and get into weird stuff. When was the last time Peter Parker just stopped a bank robbery? I mean, that was a staple, man. He used to stop bank robberies all the time, and people, ladies getting mugged on the streets, or purse snatchers or whatever. But bank robberies, that was a big thing. He used to stop them. One of my favorite issues ever was when Peter Parker was in the bank to cash his check, and it was getting robbed, and he had to figure out how to stop the robbery without revealing that he was Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Where are those kind of stories? I would surely love to see them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it makes my heart fill with joy to see that you still have those original comics that you got back in the day, the ones that shaped your life and changed the direction that you went, and gave you so much fodder for your imagination. That's just incredible. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just had such a huge impact on me and the direction that my life took and my profession, and so yeah, so they mean a lot to me. It's more than just monetary value, right?
Absolutely.
So I have one more question, and Josh is probably he might know what I'm talking about, but you're going to definitely know what I'm talking about. What in the world possessed you to draw the true Shogun of Harlem and post him on Instagram?
I love that movie.
It's not the greatest movie ever. Show enough.
I am I practice martial arts. It's something that's been a big part of my life. I practiced as a kid. And over the years, I've trained in various Japanese and Korean styles. And then when, as an adult, I got my son into it, and we trained together, and it was a very cool experience for me to be taking my son to karate class several times a week and train alongside him and on the mat, and go through black belt tests together, and so I have an affection for martial arts characters and martial arts movies, and
that
the Shogun of
the
Harlem
Iron Fist references too. I see.
Show enough is just like one of the coolest characters ever. So
my favorite thing about that movie will always be direct to your pizza to Daddy Green's Pizza. Greatest line of any movie ever. Sorry.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I saw the show enough, and I was like, I gotta bring that up. I got to.
I have to do more of him because he's a lot of fun to draw.
I
Josh,
bet.
have you seen it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about. Have you seen his drawing of him?
No, I haven't. I don't do Instagram, as you know. Everybody's after me to get the store on the Instagram account, and I do. Oh, there he is.
I saw that on your Instagram, and I was just like, hell yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that is fun. Oh, Lordy. Um, do you have anything else you want to talk to folks about? Do you have any upcoming projects that you can talk about? Um, Anything you're looking forward to doing particularly?
No, no, nothing right now. They're being pretty secretive about this upcoming Power Rangers season, and they don't really tell me anything anyway. So, yeah, I not really anything. One of the like it's the story of my career. Anything I'm working on now, I probably even can't show to the public for a year
For
at
a
least.
year at least, yeah.
Yeah.
Now you did get back into the comic book convention circuit a little bit recently. Do you have any other conventions coming up that people could plan to go and see you at?
I think I'm going to do one. I've been the comic shop in Texas that hosted me in July has asked me to come back to Texas and do another show in October.
Awesome.
So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that one. And they've been very they really think I should start just doing more conventions and doing the shows here in Chicago like C2E2 and get back into doing that. And I'm definitely considering it, especially now since I'm not under contract with anybody and I don't have any publishers telling me, not to promote my work and do that. So I can allow myself to get eased back into that. And I think it'll be fun. I enjoy talking to people and talking about the work and things like that. So.
Well, we have a convention in April here. April 21st through the 23rd is in 2023 are the dates. I'm going to talk to the showrunner of that show and see if maybe we couldn't get you down here for that, because that'd be pretty awesome. Cool. He's already made some announcements, and if you guys have not seen the announcements that came through last week for the expo for the guest list, I mean, he kicked the announcement list off with William Shatner, which that's huge for us. That's amazing. And he ended the week with Ashley Eckstein, the voice of Ahsoka Tano in Star Wars Rebels and Clone Wars, creator of her universe, and one of the coolest people in the world. And the folks in between were pretty awesome too. So it's going to be a stupendous show in 2023. I know some of the comics guests that he's got coming. I'm not allowed to say who they are, but it's going to be spectacular, and I'm going to be a very happy person.
Well, I pray every night for Larry Hama to be here next April. Every night. I bow down before my G.I. Joe #1, and I pray to it. Please come in there.
I would really love someday to meet Larry Hama, because I've never met him, and he seems like one of the coolest guys in the world. So yeah, that would be kind of neat.
He is a very interesting man. I met him several years ago at Dragon Con, and he has a list of questions on the table, like a little Q&A, and you can tell that he is just so frustrated with people asking him these things. I mean, it had things like, why is your old stuff better than your new stuff? Oh my God. His answer, it's not. I mean, like, how rude do you have to be to ask that question anyway, right? But he had this whole list of these things, and you could tell going in when you walked up to meet him, it's like, you have to prove that you're not going to be a jerk before he's like totally cool with talking to you. Because he's like, man, if you're a jerk, just I'll sign it and you go on about your business. I don't want to deal with jerks. Yeah, he's an interesting character. Been around the block, done a million things. His run on Wolverine was one of the best Wolverine runs in the history of comics. That was fantastic. But G.I. Joe clearly is a monument to comic book writing. And I hope to God whoever picks up the license to G.I. Joe after IDW is done with it, here in 3-4 issues, I hope to goodness that they bring him in, and the next issue that they do at his new place is 301. I hope they don't just start over with a new #1. Let him pick up at 301 and just keep running.
Yeah, like the business of comic book numbering has changed so much than it used to be, because
it's painful.
It used to be that if a comic book had a 2 or a 3, like nobody would buy it because they didn't trust it. So like these publishers had to, like, they would start a run at issue 114 because then people would think it's a legitimate series, and because they wouldn't buy anything with single digits. Nowadays it's the opposite. People just want to buy the number ones, and so they keep rebooting these series because the number one sells better.
It's so bad that they do a limited series and they don't even acknowledge that it's a limited series. They've currently got one. Marvel has one running that it's Moon Girl and Moon Knight, Moon Girl and Spider-Man, Moon Girl and Black Panther. It's all one story, but they bill it as a series of one-shots and they call them all number one. They even, and they do, they will do a 6-issue limited series, and then before number one, they issue an alpha, and that they wrap it up with Omega, but they stick a number one on both the Alpha and the Omega book. So it's really 8 issues, but you have 3 number ones.
Right.
And one of those is the last of the end of the story. It makes no sense. Like, come on, people. Have some faith in your product. If you think the story is good enough to publish it, have faith and put an actual number next to it that's real.
Yeah.
That's my soapbox for the night.
Yeah, I could, from someone who's been both a reader and a collector, the business of selling comics, to the collectors, because it definitely boosts sales, but it's kind of, it really changes the way comic books are sold.
It boosts sales short term.
Right.
People who buy for the covers and such, they are not in it for the long haul, and most of them are just trying to flip it and make a profit off of it.
Right.
So it's a very different business model, and you're inherently catering to a riskier proposition. It's more profitable in the short run, but not in the long run.
Well, I think too, and because I love comic book collecting. I've been doing it, since I was a kid, but when Gen X guys like me make complaints like, oh, this is like the 90s all over again, and then the millennial collectors say, no, you don't know what you're doing, talking about, old man, this is completely different. What we're talking about is the publishers, the focus is selling more comics by trying to sell the same issue, multiple copies of the same issue to one collector. And they're right? Their decisions are, it's all about, catering to the flippers and the collectors, and it's not about, selling to the readers. And I think, and that's the parallel to the thing that created the 90s bubble. And
you are 100% on target with that. Absolutely. And the parallels are absolutely there. The one major difference I think we have now between now and the bubble in the 90s is there's a really strong independent comic book market right now. Yeah. A lot of small companies who are doing great stuff. They're not doing 400 covers of every issue. It's ridiculous the number of covers that are available for all of these, and a store would go bankrupt trying to order them all, and hoping that someone wants to buy them. Because a lot of times they don't. But the independent market right now is very, very strong. There are some phenomenal independent publishers out there. Mad Cave Studios, AWA, Boom Studios, Vault. They're doing great stuff. And I don't even count Image and Dark Horse as independents really anymore. But IDW has been making most of their money off of licensed properties like Transformers, G.I. Joe, but they are in the process of pivoting to creator-owned IP and moving that direction. We'll see how successful they are with it, but that's the direction that they're going. And I wish them all the best and hope they do well. There needs to be more of that out there.
Yeah, definitely.
But we've held you for quite some time. I'm sorry for holding you so late. Anything you want to say to folks before we let you go?
No, I appreciate you bringing me on. And this was a great conversation. I had a lot of fun. So thank you
Well,
very
we
much.
certainly appreciate you coming on. Like I said, we're a small little comic book company or comic book store in North Alabama. We really are glad to have you join us.
Anytime you want to come back on and scroll the G.I. Joe website with me, feel free.
Yeah, that's an open invitation. Anytime you're bored on a Thursday night, you let us know. We'll just bring you back on.
You know, it doesn't even have to be a Thursday night. I'm also free on Tuesday nights, whatever you do.
That's true.
We will scroll G.I. Joe websites and just talk about it.
I am always up for that.
And that's my red ninja right there. And that's my
Exactly.
Because I'll be like, and what was your inspiration for this particular?
Yeah, we could get into that easily. Well, folks, we have a couple of housekeeping things before we let everybody go. One of them is if you want to get yourself venomized, like what Jeremy Bernard did to me, that's not terrifying at all. On his Etsy page, you can go over there and you give him American dollars and he will venomize you. Pretty easy. You don't have to make a face like that. Second, don't make any comments about this, Scott, because I drew this and I do not have any artistic skill. Bear that in mind. This week is Dragon Con, and a lot of our folks are down at Dragon Con already. It's the biggest thing that happens in the Southeast as far as nerd culture goes, and everybody is there. So for those who can't go, we have our Dragon Consolation event, where if you can't go to Dragon Con, we're still doing some cool stuff here in town. And one of those things that we like to do is we like to see, he's a sad dragon because he needs consoling. We do some cross-pollination stuff with other businesses. So so far this week, we've got Just Love Coffee is going to do our Dragon Consolation event. If you guys go to Just Love Coffee anytime this weekend, buy something there, bring your receipt to Haven, you're going to get an extra 15% discount on your purchase. And vice versa. If you go to Haven, you buy something from us, and you go to Just Love Coffee, you pick up something from them, they're going to give you a special deal too. They're sending me the details on that, which I'm going to post out to our Facebook page. But that's all weekend long during the Labor Day weekend. So go out, get yourself a nice cup of coffee from a cool place with some cool people, and then come buy something from us because we're also cool and poor and we could use your money. Just saying. But yeah, so that's going to be a good weekend. It's going to be fun. If you're not going to Dragon Con, make the best of it. Come to Haven instead and come hang out with us. You know, we're going to have pizza up at the shop on Saturday because we always do. And we will hopefully see everybody on the other side of that. If you are watching this after the fact, I know we typically have a fair number of folks who do. Thank you for joining in. We appreciate it. If you ever want to join us live on a Thursday night, we'd love to have you on board for that too. So all that said, I'm going to play it even though this is no longer a quiz show and we no longer have questions and answers that we have to give. It makes me happy. So I'm going to play our final closing out reel.